Good morning, pre-algebra. Yesterday we talked about the distributive property in lesson 7.1. We practiced with the distributive property a little bit today. We're going to use some of the concepts of the distributive property to simplify algebraic expressions. So as we get into this, we need to think about what the parts of algebraic expressions are. And so here we have an expression, 3x plus 7 plus x plus 2. I'm going to sneeze, excuse me. All right. And the key part about this is when we have addition or subtraction signs that separate an algebraic expression into parts, we call each of those parts a term. So here we have a plus sign, and a plus sign. So we have 3 plus signs. So that means that each part, each segment that is separated by a plus sign, so 3x in this case, 7x, and 2, these are all terms. So that means that we have 4 terms in this expression. And in one of these terms, in this one here, our first one, 3x, we call this a coefficient because we have excuse me, let me erase that there. So the 3 here is a coefficient of the x because we have a variable and a numeric part, right? The whole thing isn't, just to be clear, the whole thing is not a coefficient. Just the 3 is a coefficient. It's what we're timesing by that variable. So that's the coefficient. So we have one coefficient, and then we have 4 terms in this expression. So other things about expressions. For now, we're only going to work with terms with an exponent of 1. We're not going to get into right exponents of 2 or 3, etc. We've already dealt with some of that already, and how to figure those out. So we're not going to worry about those. So in this case, like terms are terms that contain the same variables, such as 2n and 5n. Those would be like terms. Or 6xy and 4xy are like terms because they contain the same variables. A term without a variable is called a constant. So the 3 is a constant. Right? And the 5y and the 2y are both terms, and they happen to be like terms. So these are like terms. And that's because they both contain the variable y in them. Lastly, we need to identify what we call a factor. So a factor is a number or an expression that is being multiplied in a product. We worked with them yesterday during distributive property. We just didn't call them factors. But the factor in these two equations would be the 3 because the 3 is being multiplied into the parenthesis. Basically, it is whatever is going into the parenthesis. That would be the factor, right? Or in this case, the factor is the term 6y because that would be multiplied into both of those terms within the, or multiplied by those terms within the parentheses. So that's a factor. So when you have one of your questions, a couple of your questions are going to ask you to identify like a factor. That's what the factor is. It's what's being multiplied into that parenthesis. Okay. So again, we have 8 parts. I've only really talked about 4 or 5 of them, right? So we talked about the term, right? We talked about terms. We talked about constant, right? The constant has no variables. It is a single number like 6, right? We talked about like terms. Those would be 2 terms if their variable parts are exactly the same. The number can be different, right? It's just the variable. We talked about coefficients. When we have something like 3x, the coefficient is 3. It's the number written as a multiplier in a variable expression. We should know, we haven't talked about recently, but we should know what a product is, right? A product is the result of multiplying, just like a sum is the result of adding. And remember, the sum can be, well, the sum is the result of adding and the product is the result of multiplying. And then lastly, we just covered what a factor is. So we've covered those. Oh, and we forgot about the variable, right? But the variable is that letter that stands for some number, and we've been working with those already. Okay, so those are the parts. You may want to refer to this slide from time to time to look at those, but those are the parts. That's the full list of parts of an algebraic expression. So what we're going to be asked to do primarily in our assignments for this is to simplify expressions, right? So when we are asked to simplify an algebraic expression, we are looking for the simplest form. And the simplest form has two components. The simplest form has no like terms. So we got to add, we got to subtract, we have to multiply, we have to do whatever we have to do to get all the like terms into one term, right? So if we have three like terms, we have to get those three like terms into a single term. And the other thing that we have to do is we have to get rid of parentheses. So we have to deal with that factoring part, right? So we can use the idea, the rules of distributive property to simplify these expressions. So in our first one here, right, 4x plus 6 plus 2x. So no like terms. We have like terms, 4x and 2x in this expression. So we're going to have to combine those some way, right? And no parentheses. Well, we already don't have any parentheses in this one. So really in this one, all we're looking to do is we're looking to combine these like terms. In this case, we're going to add them together because we have the addition sign here. So 4x plus 2x equals 6x, right? And then there's nothing to do with that other plus 6, so then we have plus 6. And that is our solution to that problem. Okay. So that's that one. Our other problem here, I'm going to rewrite this. I wrote that a little big here, so I have a little more space. All right, so let me rewrite that real quick. Right, so 4x plus 2x equals 6x. And then we just add the other 6. Okay, over here, 6y minus 3, open parenthesis, x minus 2y, close the parenthesis. So, right, if we're looking for some things, here we have a like term. So we're going to have to get those like terms together. And we also have a factor, this 3, this negative 3 actually, that we're going to have to deal with. So how do we deal with this? Well, with the distributive property, right, we can set it up, right, such as 6y plus, we're going to put the negative 3 in a parenthesis, and then we're going to be timesing that by the rest of our expression. Now notice I moved that, right, I kept that negative 2y, right, that negative 2, say hello to Juliana, right, we have this negative 2y. So notice how I wrote that, right? I put parentheses, that negative 3 in parentheses, because now I'm going to, so that I can remember to multiply that into my parentheses. And I put the negative 2 in parentheses so I can have a plus sign, and I can still have a negative 2 there. So I don't get confused about my plus and minus signs. So now I just start multiplying. So negative 3 times x is going to be, we're going to rewrite this expression now. So now we're going to have plus negative 3x, right? And sorry, that plus sign there got a little messed up. Okay. And I'm running out of room here. So now we're going to multiply for the next one. We're going to multiply that -3 just by the -2. And that is going to give us, yes, Juliana?
Where's my rattle bunny?
I don't know. May I finish this, please?
No.
No? All right, so emergency averted, found bunny. So we are writing our purple line, right? We're rewriting our purple line where we have multiplied -3 times x, and now we're multiplying -3 times -2y, and we're running out of space. So I'm going to go ahead and erase what we did over here. And I'm going to erase this red one, and we're going to rewrite that over here. I know it's a little confusing, but we have 6y now. -3 times x is -3x. -3 times -2 is going to be a positive number, and 3 times 2 is 6, and then that y stays there. So we have 6y minus 3x plus 6y. Okay. And now, so now we got rid of the parentheses. Now we have to get rid of our plus signs. And remember, we could write this as -3x within parentheses and then have a plus sign just outside that parenthesis. That's another way we could do that. Okay. So the easiest way, right, to do this is now we're just going to add our 6y to our, I was hoping for green there, to our 6y. So 6y plus 6y means that we just add the number part. We don't add the y part. So we just add the number part. So we're going to do 6 plus 6. So that's going to be 12y. And we have now minus 3x. We could also write it as, or we could write it as -3x within parentheses, right, plus 12. But since we are, right, but I want us to point that although that is possible, we may encounter a problem like that, we're really trying to have no parenthesis. So this would be, let me circle this in purple, this would be the best answer for our problem. We've gotten rid of the parentheses, we have no like terms, and that would be our solution. All right, so that's it. Good luck on your homework, and we will see you tomorrow.